So in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to do the questions for game 3 from Prep Test 78. So I'll have to start with a diagram here to get caught up. Okay, during the week-long grand opening of a new antique shop, the antique dealer will auction exactly one antique per day for 6 consecutive days, the 1st through the 6th. The antiques to be auctioned: H, L, M, S, T, and V. Okay, the sundial is not on the 1st. And then we have a conditional, so if H is before L, then M is also before L, which means that if M is not before L, then H is not before L. And in this case, if M isn't before L, that's the same as saying that L is before M, because we don't have any ties, right? We have exactly one antique per day. So if we wanted to, we could just flip those around there. Okay, so we actually don't have any ties in this one. So if M is not before L, then M has to be after L. They can't be at the same time. So hopefully that makes sense. So there's our contrapositive. One thing that I want to make note of here is this doesn't necessarily mean that L is either before both M and H or after both M and H. So in this case, if we know H is before L, then we know M is also before L. And if we know M is after L, then we know H is also after L. But we could avoid the triggers altogether by putting M before L and L before H. So those are the three possibilities that we get from this rule. Okay, so this doesn't act like our usual complex OR rule, where it only gives us two options. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so rule 1, rule 2, rule 3. The sundial is auctioned on an earlier date than the mirror and also on an earlier date than the vase. So this one's not conditional. Okay, so we have the sundial before the mirror and also before the vase. The table is auctioned on an earlier date than the harmonica or on an earlier date than the vase, but not both. So we can't have V after T in this scenario, so V has to be before T. And we can't have H after T in this scenario, so H has to be before T. So those are our two options. So this is what we're used to seeing when it comes to like our typical complex OR rules. Okay. So that's the typical one, and then this one is more relative position conditional, and so it's actually like more complex than a complex OR rule because we actually have three options. That makes sense. All right, so those are the rules. Let's get into the questions now. Sometimes with something like this, I might create like a few different scenarios. So for example, I would add this rule to each of these scenarios and then see what kind of impact that might have for rule 2. So we could give that a try, or we could just go straight into the questions. Okay, so I'll do both. So I'll show you those two scenarios. So we've got S before M and V. In this case, V is before T, which is before H, and S can't be first, right? So we go back to rule 1, S can't be first. So that means that the only remaining player is going to have to be first, and that's L. So L will be first, S will be second, and then we have M can kind of jump in here in any of these spots. Okay, so that's one world of solutions. And then we have, again, S before M, which is, and also before V, and then H before T before V. Okay, S can't be first, H could be. If H is before L, then M is also before L. So if H is before L, then L is going to be, probably kind of closer to the end there, right? It's going to have to be after H, S, and M, right? And if L is before M, then it's also before H, and so it would be first. So we can see those scenarios. And we could have MLH, except S can't be first. So this is no longer an option, because if we tried to make that work in this scenario, we would end up with this. Okay, but S can't be first, so that whole thing is ruined. All right? So that really means that we don't have to deal with this possibility. So they're not really testing you on that level of complexity. Even though it does exist, they're not really testing you on it, because we have another rule that's going to take care of it and make it just like a non-issue. Okay, but we could have M and H both before L, or we could have L before both H and M. Okay, so this is really like two scenarios here, and this is one. Okay, so maybe take a little bit of time to just make sure that you've got all of that straight. If you had misinterpreted any of these rules, then take some time to figure out why that is, and what you should have done differently. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know. Yeah, and then I'll get into the questions in the next video.